Hello, good day everyone. So welcome back to my channel. Welcome to the Free Mind. I hope you are enjoying today. I hope you are still with me, and thank you so much for subscribing and for leaning your ears to all my discussions. So I'll be discussing another video lesson. This is very new to me. So I'll be discussing the life and works of Dr. Jose Rizal. So let's talk about my chapter one. My chapter one, let's talk about the introduction to the 19th century Philippines and its historical background. So let's talk about the significant events happening during the 19th century. So I hope you will be with me until the end of my discussion. Okay, so the 19th century, we were not yet there. The 19th century was a crucial period in the history of the Philippines. So many things are happening during the 19th century. And it was marked as a very significant socio-political changes and the beginnings of a national awakening. So many things are happening, so many things are written, and uh, so many things are affects the Filipino people. So let's start with the Spanish colonial rule. So throughout the 19th century, we were not yet there. The Philippines was under the Spanish colonial rule. I know you are all aware with that. We were under the Spanish colonial rule. The Spanish implemented a system that positioned the Catholic Church and the Spanish friars as a powerful figures in Filipino society. That was during the 19th century. We have this called the local elites. They are known as the Principalia, also held significant sway. However, most of the Filipinos population lived in rural areas and worked as farmers or laborers with limited political representation and rights. And again, during this time, Filipinos are still living in rural areas, and we worked as a farmer, as a laborer with a very limited exposure to our rights, our political rights. So that was a very short background about the Spanish colonial rule. So we are going to talk about here some of the highlights of during the 19th century. So the first highlight is the Spanish colonial rule. So we were colonized by the Spaniards. I know we are all aware with that. For almost 333 years, 3 centuries, we were under the Spanish colonization. Number two highlights during the 19th century is the economic changes. So during the 19th century, the 19th century saw a substantial economic changes. So we experienced economic changes during the 19th century. Again, we were colonized by the Spaniards, right? So the Manila Acapulco galleon trade, which had been a cornerstone of the Philippine economy since the 16th century, ended in the early 1800s. This, however, was followed by the opening of the Suez Canal in 1869, which made the Philippines more accessible to international trade. Manila, the capital, became a significant commercial hub. Again, we experienced changes, substantial changes. The Manila Acapulco galleon trade, it ended in the early 1800s, and then after it ends, there is also an opening of the Suez Canal, which opened the door for more international trade, and Manila became the capital of become a significant commercial hub. So people are coming in and out. People are doing international trading from one country to another country, so that they saw a very substantial economic changes during this time. So another, and also at the same time, we have this agriculture. So during the 19th century, agricultural sector also underwent a shift with an increasing focus on cash crops like tobacco, sugar, abaca for export. And also during this time, we experienced very good agricultural shift. So there's an increasing need of tobacco, sugar, and abaca for export. So we are exporting products during the 19th century. And this agricultural sector boom led to the rise of an affluent middle class in Philippine society. So because of this, we experience a boom of of our agricultural sector because of the export, because we were exporting products from one country to another country. So another highlight during the 19th century is our social changes. The growing middle class started to demand more political rights and representation. So there is a growing middle class. So they were largely educated, with many having studied in Europe. So when it comes to social changes, Filipinos are also experiencing. They also wanted to study abroad, to study in Europe, and that gives them a very liberal and nationalist ideas, and that brings this educated class wanted to do more reform because they are more equipped. They learn something because they study in Europe, so they learn something what is happening in Europe, and then they try to change it here. So those are the social changes that we experience, especially for the middle class. So this educated class is known to be the ilustrados. During the 19th century, there are also people who are called as ilustrados, the educated class. So they studied in Europe, and then when they learn something in Europe, so they want to do it also in the Philippines. So that's the time, that's the rise of our nationalism. So another highlight also is the rise of nationalism. So the second half of the 19th century saw the rise of Philippine nationalism because then again we were some of our middle class, educated class, they went to school and they study in Europe. So they started to have to become more knowledgeable and more they experienced that the feeling of being nationalistic. They saw the rise of Philippine nationalism because of education. The execution of the three Filipino priests. I know you are all aware with these three Filipino priests. We have the known as Gomborza. We have Mariano Gomez, Jose Burgos, and Jacinto Zamora. So these are the three Filipino priests who were executed, right? So in 1872, following in 1872, following a mutiny in Cavite, sparked a sense of national consciousness among Filipinos. Because of these three priests who were executed, so followed by a mutiny in Cavite, it sparked a sense of national consciousness among Filipinos. Propaganda movements flourished in Spain, and the Philippines advocating for equal rights, freedom of speech, and representation. And because of the struggles that our Filipino society were experiencing during these times, so it awakened. It awakened and the rise of nationalism. It awakened the national consciousness of the people, and it sparked, and the Filipino people are advocating for equal rights, freedom of speech, and representation. So, revolution and the end of the Spanish rule. So we are trying to have our own freedom. We are trying to not be in control anymore with the Spanish rule, the Spanish colonial rule. So by the end of the 19th century, the desire for independence reached its peak with the formation of the Katipunan. So because of that desire to be independent, so they formed this so-called Katipunan, a revolutionary group led by Andres Bonifacio. So this led to the outbreak of the Philippine Revolution in 1896. So though Jose Rizal played a significant figure during this period, initially advocated for peaceful reform, his execution by the Spanish in 1896 further fueled the revolution. So Dr. Jose Rizal wanted to advocate a peaceful reform. But again, during his execution in the year 1896, it again fueled another revolution. So by 1898, the Spanish-American War broke out. So 1898, so after the execution of Dr. Jose Rizal, so the 1898, the Spanish-American War broke out. And Spain ceded the Philippines to the United States through the Treaty of Paris, ending over 3 centuries of Spanish rule. Because of this revolution, because of this, that it fueled another revolution after the execution of Dr. Rizal. It ended that over 3 centuries of Spanish rule, which is a great sense of independence for Filipinos. So again, there was a rise of nationalism because of all the struggles, because of the execution of the three Filipino priests and the execution of Dr. Rizal. Dr. Rizal wanted to do a peaceful reform. But again, the feelings of the Filipino people fueled another revolution after his execution. So another highlight, the historical context of the life and works of Rizal, is the propaganda movement. So the propaganda movement, this movement was the first Filipino nationalist movement, which emerged in the late 19th century. So this movement emerged in the late 19th century. It was initiated by the Filipino people in Europe, particularly in Spain, and was marked by a peaceful campaign for reforms in the Philippines. So we all wanted a peaceful reform in the Philippines. During the late 19th century, we are aiming for a peaceful campaign reforms here. So the proponent were the Ilustrados. Ilustrados are those people who belong to the educated class. So the proponents of this propaganda movement are those Ilustrados, educated Filipino elites who had studied in Europe. Diba? We are some of the middle class, local elites. They go to school. They went to Europe to study, and it awakened of uh, their national consciousness among Filipinos. So again, because they study in Europe, so they were exposed to a lot of things. They were exposed to liberal and nationalist ideas. So they are more equipped, they are more knowledgeable. It awakens and it started the rise of nationalism. So key figures of this movement included Jose Rizal, Marcelo H. Del Pilar, Graciano Lopez Haina. So they studied in Europe, right? So they are known to be the Ilustrados. So they push for assimilation. They push for assimilation. They push for freedom of speech, equal rights before the law for both Filipinos and Spaniards. So they are aiming for that. They are aiming for freedom of speech and equal rights and equal representation in the Spanish times. So they articulated their advocacies. They are articulated their advocacies through writing and publishing in various mediums. I know you are all aware with how brilliant is Dr. Rizal. He wrote a lot of books. All his advocacies, he wrote it down through writing and publishing it in various mediums, including the newspaper, the La Solidaridad. So I hope you still remember that. So while the movement didn't directly lead to a revolution, it awakened political consciousness among Filipinos and laid the ideological groundwork for the revolution that followed. So it was a peaceful reform, but again, it awakened the Filipino consciousness, the political consciousness among Filipinos, and laid the ideological groundwork for the revolution that followed. So another highlight during the 19th century is the Katipunan. I know you are all aware with this. So Katipunan or the KKK, the kataas-taasan, kagalang-galangan, katipunan ng mga anak ng bayan. Or simply Katipunan. So this is a revolutionary society founded by anti-Spanish Filipinos in Manila in 1892, led by Andres Bonifacio. So it aimed for the independence of the Philippines from Spanish rule through armed revolt, in contrast to the peaceful reform campaigns of the propaganda movement. So again, Andres Bonifacio led this KKK because the propaganda movement, the aim is for peaceful reform, but Andres Bonifacio wanted to to gain independence through armed revolt. So he founded this Katipunan, the kataas-taasan, kagalang-galangan, katipunan ng mga anak ng bayan. So the Katipunan was organized into three levels. We have the local or the barangay level, the provincial level, and the National Supreme Council. Its members underwent initiation rites and used secret codes and symbolic rituals. So the discovery of the Katipunan by Spanish authorities in 1896 led the outbreak of the Philippine Revolution. Again, when the Spanish authorities found out that there is a Katipunan, a group of revolutionary society, so again, in 1896, it led to the outbreak of the Philippine Revolution. Again, understanding the life and works of Rizal is very interesting like this, no? We try to go back in time. We refresh our mind, our hearts to the real beauty of the historical context of what was truly happening during this time because we were not yet there. Again, it was discovered by the Spanish authorities, the KKK. So these two movements demonstrated the escalating desire for independence among Filipinos during the 19th century. And because of this revolution, it sparked another desire. It sparked another desire among Filipinos in the 19th century. The peaceful reformist propaganda gave way to an armed revolution, signifying the intense struggle for national sovereignty against colonial rule. So it was led again by Andres Bonifacio. He wants to end the Spanish rule through armed revolt, so he formed this Katipunan. So another highlight is education and enlightenment. So during the 19th century, education became more widespread in the Philippines. People are now educated. We want to study, we want to learn more, we want to be more knowledgeable about things. So schools were set up by religious orders during this time, such as the Dominicans, the Franciscans, and the Jesuits. These schools mostly followed by the Spanish educational system and taught subjects like grammar, philosophy, theology, Latin, and the arts. However, higher education was a privilege mostly accessible to the elites. Yes, during this time, those middle class or the elites or the local elites are very privileged to go to school, something like this, to learn more, to be more knowledgeable. So many members of the emerging middle class sought education abroad. So if you belong to a middle class, you sought education abroad. You go to Europe, you go to Spain. So particularly in Spain and other parts of Europe. So they go to school in Spain and other parts of Europe. This exposure to European ideas played a crucial role in awakening a sense of nationalism among the Filipinos, which is good. Because again, when you go to school abroad, so you learn something from them, you become more equipped, be more knowledgeable, and you have a lot of exposure, and it awakens your sense of nationalism among the Filipinos. That's why Dr. Jose Rizal studied in abroad, in particularly in other parts of Europe. It awakens his sense of nationalism among the Filipinos. But again, Dr. Jose Rizal wanted to have a peaceful reform, advocate for peaceful reform. That's why all his advocacies, it was written down and published in the newspaper called the La Solidaridad. So that experience led to a wave of enlightenment, wherein many ilustrados or the educated Filipinos began advocating for political reforms. And because of this exposure to another country, especially particularly in other parts of Europe, so they began advocating for political reforms. They want change. So which is a good idea. That's why we are now enjoying our independence, our Philippine independence because of them. So another highlight is a religion and the church. So the Catholic Church was a dominant institution in the 19th century Philippines. The friars held significant power and wealth, owning large tracts of lands. So the church had significant influence on the educational and political life of the country. However, the church powers was not left unquestioned. Because then again, the execution of Gomborza, the three Filipino priests, following the Cavite Mutiny of 1872, led to increased criticism of the Spanish friars. Again, there were also questions raising during this time, the 19th century, but again, the dominant institution during the 19th century is the Catholic Church. Furthermore, the secularization controversy, where native Filipino priests demanded to lead parishes instead of Spanish friars, led to significant tension. Again, we experienced significant tension because the Filipino priests wanted to lead the parishes instead of the Spanish friars. So they experienced tension, and there were also the Spanish friars were also questioned. The church power were also questioned because of a lot of issues like the execution of the three Filipino priests, the Cavite Mutiny. So that was the highlight during the 19th century. So another highlight during those time in the 19th century is the cultural development. So during the 19th century was also a period of cultural awakening in the Philippines. So we are now using our own vernacular language. So there is development. Vernacular language began to be used in literature, replacing Spanish and Latin. So there was a growth in the production of literature, including novels, poetry, and essay, which express awakening Filipino nationalism. So this period also saw the rise of a distinct Filipino identity. So we acquire our own identity during this time. We can use our vernacular language, our Bisaya, Tagalog, we can use that, replacing Spanish and Latin. Because again, we were colonized by the Spaniards for 3 centuries, for 333 years. So we were also influenced by their own language. But during this time, we continually developed and make some changes. We can use our vernacular language of this time. So we can see now that we also saw the rise of a distinct Filipino identity. So in summary, the 19th century was a transformative period in the Philippines. The social, the economic, the political, and cultural changes set the stage for the revolutionary movements and eventually the struggle for independence. So there is a change. We can use our vernacular language. We have our own identity as Filipinos. We were not influenced by the Spaniards people. So we were slowly gaining our cultural awakening as Filipinos. So another highlight is the infrastructure development. So again, when we were colonized by the Spaniards people, the Spanish government, they also give us a positive things, no? So the Spanish government launched public work projects to build roads, bridges, ports, lighthouse, and public buildings. So the development of infrastructure improved domestic and international trade and opened up rural areas for economic activities. Yes, so they launch a lot of projects here in the Philippines to improve our country, to help us for economic activities. It also provided the necessary logistical support for the administration and defense of the Spanish rule. Aside from that, they also used that as one way of supporting their own administration and defense of the Spanish rule. So there is a good side, and again, they also have their own purpose why they do that. So another highlight is the railways. So the first railway line in the Philippines was opened in 1892, connecting Manila and Dagupan. This marked a significant shift in the transport system and boosted the economy by reducing the cost and time of transporting goods and people. Since we have railways, so it's easy for us to go anywhere, right? It reduces time and the cost of transporting goods and people. It was good. It connects Manila and Dagupan. So the first railway in the Philippines was opened in 1892. So let's be thankful with that. So it's easy to access, to go anywhere, the goods coming in and out, and also the people. So another highlight also is the healthcare. So in the field of healthcare, the Spanish government established, so we should be thankful also for them. In the field of healthcare, the Spanish government established hospitals and health centers in various parts of the country. However, so there's also a problem. The reach of these services was primarily limited to urban areas. So if you're living in the city, in the urban areas, you are good. You can avail, you can go there for the hospitals. How about those people who are living in the rural areas? So it was sad for them because they have to go, they came from very far. So they have to go there. The transportation was also a problem, I think, during this time. So it was hard for them. But if you're living in the city, in the urban area, and so it was good, you can avail that. So another highlight is the telecommunication. So another significant development was the establishment of the telegraph system. Again, the first telegraph was opened in 1873. I am not yet there. Was born in 18 1986. Was born 1986. So again, connecting Manila with the provincial town of Bacoor. So the telegraph in 1873. With the end of the century, many provinces, it was good because after the telegraph, many provinces were connected via telegraph, enabling faster communication across the archipelago. So we are developing when it comes to telecommunication, healthcare. Up to this time, we are developing. So it's nice to study his historical history, the life and works of our of Dr. Rizal. It also awakened our Filipino nationalism. So another highlight is the education system and press. So as mentioned earlier, education was increasingly made accessible, especially for the ilustrados or the middle class. So they can study and work abroad, especially in any other parts of Europe. Again, it made accessible, especially with the Education Decree of 1863 that established a public education system. Also, the press became an essential tool for expressing discontent against the Spanish rule and spreading nationalist idea, with newspapers like La Solidaridad playing a crucial role. Because we are the education is made accessible for everybody. So people are learning, people are gaining a lot of knowledge, a lot of questions. So we are also establishing our right to express if we are discontented with what is going on. So also this newspaper, the La Solidaridad, played a very important role during this time. So the 19th century, especially its later part, was a time of significant changes in the Philippines, laying the groundwork for the emergency of the modern Filipino nations. Again, we experience a lot of things, our historical context, significant events. It's nice to go back in time, to go back what was really happening during the 19th century. So I hope you are learning. So I will continue this discussion. I will continue discussing this because this is a very long discussion, just to give you the significant highlights of what was happening in our country during the 19th century. It was good. It was very refreshing to know about this, to learn about this time. Since we were not yet born during 19th century, but it's nice to embrace and to appreciate the beauty, the things that we are enjoying now because of the struggles and the sacrifices they made for us Filipinos to gain our own independence. Thank you so much for watching all my videos, for subscribing to my channel. I hope you will continue listening to my channel. So I will be discussing lesson 1.2 to continue this lesson for my chapter 1 discussion, the historical context of the life and works of Dr. Jose Rizal. Thank you so much and God bless you.